I was the one who patched the field hospital module together in the cargo bay. So I was the one standing in the hatch when the ramp came down, and we saw what we'd actually been sent to. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't even a wreck. It was a processor yard on a colony called Hearn's Rest, sun-bleached corrugated roofing over a chapel annex bolted to the side of an atmospheric scrubber stack, and one woman standing at the gate with a wrench still in her hand like she didn't know what else to do with it. We picked up the call 11 hours out. Not a call, really. That was the thing nobody on the bridge wanted to say out loud until the linguist confirmed it. It was a hymn, an old fault hymn, the kind you sing to a machine that's dying so the machine knows somebody noticed, on a frequency our deep grid array still had logged as an emergency band from some joint survey hymnal accord that predated half the officers currently serving on this ship. Nobody on Hearn's Rest had filed a distress report. Nobody on Hearn's Rest had a working relay to file one with. The captain looked at the waveform for a long time before he gave the order. Then he said, "Heard you," to a room with no one alien in it, and we burned in. By the time we set down, the scrubber stack had maybe 6 hours of clean air left in it for the 400 people who lived under it. I didn't know that yet. I just knew the captain wanted the field hospital module assembled before we landed, and I'd built it twice in drills and never once for real, and my hands shook the whole descent doing it anyway. Her name was Oz Keithra. I learned that later from the report because she didn't introduce herself at the gate. She just looked at the frigate sitting in her dust like a building had fallen out of the sky, and she looked at the three of us coming down the ramp and she said, "I didn't call you." "I know," I said. It was the only honest thing I had. I was singing to the compressor. She said it like a confession, like she expected to be in trouble for it. "It's old, older than the colony charter. You sing to it when it's failing so it knows someone's listening before it goes. My grandmother sang it to the original unit. I wasn't." She stopped, looked at the frigate again. "That wasn't supposed to go anywhere." "It went somewhere," I said. The official report makes it sound cleaner than it was. The scrubber stack wasn't failing from age. It was failing because Oz Keithra had kept it alive by hand for 3 years on a maintenance budget that had been zero for 2 of them, after the regional survey office that used to service Hearn's Rest folded into a larger zone, and the colony fell off somebody's list. 400 people, one set of hands that understood the machine. She'd been running rotating shifts with 4 others who could follow instructions but not diagnose anything, and the hymn wasn't hope. It was just what you did. It was Tuesday. The captain didn't say much when he came down. He looked at the compressor housing, cracked manifold, 2 failed redundant lines, a patch job that had clearly been repatched at least 6 times with whatever Oz Keithra had on hand, and he looked at her, and he said, "We'll need about 4 hours." "For what?" "The repair." She laughed, short and disbelieving, the kind of laugh that comes out when a person hasn't slept properly in longer than they'd admit. "You don't have the part. Nobody has the part. The line that's failing was discontinued before I was born." "We don't need the part," the captain said. "We need the housing dimensions. We'll fabricate one." I watched her do the math right there at the gate. I'd seen it happen before, on 2 other misroutes since I'd come aboard, and it always looked the same, a kind of stillness, like she was running a calculation she couldn't believe the inputs for. She wasn't doing the math on gratitude. She was doing it on cost, what this would owe somebody later, for 400 people who'd had nothing to offer in the first place. "We didn't ask for this," she said again, quieter. "You didn't," I agreed. "The hymn did. It's on a frequency from an old joint survey accord, something about hymnal pattern monitoring, written before either of our governments existed in their current shape. Nobody decommissioned it. We've still got people on duty who log it." "That's not a real distress channel." "It became one," I said, "the day you sang into it." We set up the field hospital module in the chapel annex because it had the only level concrete pad on the property, and because Oz Keithra didn't want it near the compressor. She said the noise of people moving around would be disrespectful, given what the chapel was for, and none of us argued with her about it. 4 hours turned into 5. The fabrication crew cut a new manifold housing to spec off a hand-measured cast. Keithra walked them through herself, correcting their tolerances twice, and I watched the lead fabricator stop arguing with her about the third correction and just do it her way, because she was right both times. While that ran, the medic worked through the colony's chronic care backlog. 2 years of untreated joint damage from people doing manual labor that should have had powered assist. A child with a respiratory condition that had gone undiagnosed because there'd been no one qualified to diagnose it. An old man whose hearing aid had died 8 months ago and never been replaced. None of it was an emergency. All of it had just been sitting there, waiting, the way things wait when nobody's coming. Keithra stood in the chapel doorway and watched the medic work, and at one point she said, mostly to herself, "I sing that hymn every week. I've sung it for 3 years. Nobody ever came before." "The frequency's only been active 11 days, I told her. "There was a relay fault on our end. That whole hymnal monitoring band's been dark for months. Maintenance fixed it 11 days ago. You got unlucky for 3 years and then you got lucky once." "That's not luck. That's a coincidence wearing luck's coat." I didn't have an answer for that. I still don't, honestly. I've turned it over more times than I'd admit to the captain. The compressor came back online 40 minutes before her own deadline would have hit, she'd known, to the hour, how long the colony had left, and she never once told us the number until after the repair was finished, because she said it wouldn't have changed how fast we worked, and she didn't see the use in frightening people with arithmetic they couldn't act on. That, more than anything else that day, was the thing that stayed with me. She'd been carrying that number alone for who knows how long, doing the math every single shift, and she never spent it as leverage. She just kept singing the hymn and turning the wrench. Before we lifted off, the captain stood with her at the gate one more time. And he did something I hadn't seen him do on either of the other 2 misroutes. He apologized. "We should have had someone on that frequency years ago," he said. 11 days is sooner than 3 years, but it isn't soon enough, and that's on our maintenance schedule, not yours. I'm filing this as a service failure on our end. You'll have a standing contact relay before we're out of the system, so the next time something fails, you won't need a hymn to reach us." She didn't say thank you. I think she'd worked out, same as I had, that thank you wasn't really the shape of what had happened here. It wasn't a gift exchanged for gratitude. It was an oversight finally getting corrected. 11 days and 3 years too late, depending on how you wanted to count it. What she said instead was, "I'm not going to stop singing it." "You don't have to," the captain said. "Just sing it knowing somebody might actually be listening this time." We lifted at dusk. I filed my section of the incident report from the cargo bay before I'd even finished breaking down the field hospital module. 1 frigate, 1 fabricated housing, 1 cleared medical backlog, and 1 written apology for response time, logged separately from the repair manifest because the captain wanted it on the record as its own line item, not folded into the rest. 3 things delivered for a call that was never aimed at us, and a 4th thing besides, the kind you can't measure in parts or hours. I asked him once, much later, why he'd bothered with the apology. We'd done the work. The compressor ran. Nobody on Hearn's Rest was ever going to file a complaint against a frigate that showed up out of nowhere and fixed their air. He said the apology wasn't for them. It was for the log, so that the next officer who pulled up that frequency, 11 months or 11 years from now, would see exactly how long somebody had been singing into the dark before anyone thought to check if the line was still live. I still think about her standing at that gate with the wrench, telling us she hadn't called us, like she was bracing to be told the visit was a mistake and we'd be leaving again. We weren't a mistake. We were just slow. There's a difference, even if from where she was standing for 3 years it must have looked exactly the same.